Lena stood alone in the quiet of her workshop on Earth, the scent of oil and warm metal filling the air around her. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines and the sun dipped low over the hills of Oregon. She wiped her hands on a rag and stared. At the old comm unit sitting on the shelf, it had been silent for weeks, but today it blinked with a soft red light. She knew what it meant. 3 months ago, the United Earth Council had sent out a call for volunteers, not for soldiers or scientists, but for someone willing to represent humanity in a way no one ever had. Before the Varelians had made contact, not with weapons or warnings, but with an offer of unity through marriage. They were an ancient species from the Proxima system, peaceful and deeply connected to one another through something they called the Weave, a living network of thought and emotion that bound their entire civilization together. They believed that true peace could not be written in treaties but woven through. Lena had never expected to be chosen. She was just a technician who fixed solar grids and helped neighbors during blackouts. But the council had reviewed thousands of profiles, and somehow her name rose to the top. They said it was because of her empathy, her patience, her ability to listen more than she spoke. At first she refused. She told them no over and over. She wasn't ready. She had never even been in love. She barely dated, and the thought of marrying a stranger, let alone an alien, felt like stepping off a cliff blindfolded. But then her grandmother, Martha, sat in her rocking chair on the porch. Her silver hair catching the afternoon light, she held the comm unit close and her voice was gentle, but firm. Lena, you've spent your whole life fixing things that are broken. This might be your chance to help fix something bigger than a power line. Lena argued. She cried. She paced the floor of her small cabin for 2 nights straight. But in the end, she said, she stood in the human delegation chamber aboard the Zen Harmony station, orbiting Proxima Centauri b. The walls hummed with energy, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and something floral. She wore a simple white gown made from earth cotton, no jewels, no frills, just clean lines and quiet dignity. At the far end of the circular room stood Kalatha. Varelian emissary was taller than any human, with skin like polished onyx that shimmered with faint blue undertones. Her eyes glowed violet, and her hair flowed like liquid silver down her back. She wore a gown woven from living fibers that pulsed softly with each breath. It was alive in a way Lena couldn't fully understand, but it felt peaceful. Hundreds of Varelians stood in concentric rings around them. Their forms varied, some slender with long limbs, others broader with smooth features, but all watched in respectful silence, their presence calm and steady like a deep ocean. Lena took a slow breath and began to walk. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from fear but from the weight of what this meant. She wasn't just marrying a person. She was becoming a bridge between 2 worlds. Kayla turned as Lena approached, her expression unreadable at first, but then the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. It was the Varelian version of a smile, subtle but real. You came, Kayla said, her voice like wind through crystal chimes. I did, Lena replied, her voice steadier than she expected. They faced the Unity Stone, a massive orb, floating in the center of the chamber. It pulsed with soft blue light, the heart of the Varelian bond ritual. The efficient Zoran stepped forward, his 6 arms raised high, his eyes like molten gold. He began the chant in the old tongue, words that resonated not just in the air but in the bones of everyone. Present, Lena closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. She thought of her grandmother's garden, the smell of lavender, the sound of bees, the way Martha would hum while planting tomatoes. She thought of her friends who had cried when she left Earth, of the letters they sent her every week, filled with jokes and news and love. She also thought of Kaylaine, the weeks leading up to the ceremony. They had spent hours together, not speaking much at first, but learning each other's rhythms. Kayla taught Lena how to read the emotions of Varelians through the color shifts in their skin and the patterns in their hair. Lena taught Kayla how to make tea, how to laugh at silly human videos, and how to hold someone's hand without squeezing too hard. There was something between them, something quiet and growing like a seed beneath the soil. The ritual reached its peak. Zoran placed his palms on the Unity Stone and light erupted, filling the chamber, not blinding but warm like sunlight after rain. The stone split open, revealing 2 smaller orbs. One floated to Lena, the other to Kayla. This is your bond, Zoran said. If you accept it, you will share thoughts, dreams, and pain. You will never Be alone again, but you will also never be only yourself again. Choose wisely. Lena looked at Kayla, who met her gaze without flinching. There was no pressure in her eyes, only openness, an invitation. Not a demand. Lena took a breath and reached for the orb as her fingers touched it. A wave of sensation crashed over her. She saw Kayla's childhood among the crystal forests of Virellis. She felt the loneliness of being chosen as an emissary, the weight of representing an entire species. She also felt something else, a flicker of hope, a quiet yearning for connection that mirrored her own. Kayla gasped softly as Lena's memories flooded her too. The sting of loss, the warmth of community, the ache of wondering if she would ever find someone who truly understood her. The orbs merged into one and sank into the floor. The chamber fell silent. Then from every Virelian throat rose a single harmonic note, a song of welcome. The bond was sealed. After the ceremony, they walked together through the station's observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Lena leaned against the transparent wall and sighed. "So what happens now?" she asked. "We learn each other." Kayla said, "We build something new together." Lena smiled for the first time that day, a real smile, not forced, not nervous, just peaceful. I liked the sound of that. Days turned into weeks. The bond between them deepened, not through grand gestures, but through small moments. Kayla learned to cook human food, though she still found bread confusing. "Why do you bake air into it?" she asked one morning while staring at a loaf. Lena laughed and showed her how to make pancakes in return. Kayla took Lena to the resonance gardens where Virelians communed with plants that sang in frequencies only they could hear. Lena couldn't hear the songs, but she felt them in her bones, a gentle vibration that soothed her mind. They talked about everything, the future of humans and Virelians, the fear some Earth leaders still held, the dreams they both carried for a galaxy where species didn't just coexist but truly knew one another. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their shared quarters watching the twin moons of Proxima rise, Kayla turned to Leonardo. "You ever regret it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lena thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, because before I met you, I was waiting for something I didn't even know existed. Now, I'm not waiting anymore." Kayla reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined, the bond between them, humming softly like a second heartbeat. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They didn't need to back on Earth. News of the Union spread. Some called it foolish, others brave. But in a small town in Oregon, an old woman sat on her porch watching the sunset. A letter from Lena resting in her lap, she smiled and whispered to the wind, "Good girl," and far away among the stars. Two women, one human, one alien, built a life not defined by differences but shaped by the courage to embrace them. Weeks passed and the rhythm of life aboard Zen Harmony Station settled into something new for Lena. She no longer woke with the jolt of unfamiliarity. Instead, she opened her eyes to the soft hum of the station and the quiet presence of Kayla beside her. Their bond had grown stronger, not loud or overwhelming, but steady like a river carving its path through stone. They shared dreams now, not always clear, but filled with colors and feelings that lingered long after waking. One morning, Kayla brought her a cup of steamed root tea, the Virelian version of coffee. It smelled earthy and warm. Lena took it with a grateful smile and sat by the window watching a cargo shuttle glide toward the docking bay below. "Earth has sent another message," Kayla said, her voice calm but with a thread of concern beneath it. Lena turned her head slowly. They had agreed to share all communications from home. No secrets, no shields. What did they say? "The Council is uneasy. They fear the bond is changing you too much." Lena set the cup down, her chest tightening slightly. She had noticed changes herself. Small ones at first. She could sense shifts in Kayla's mood before words were spoken. Sometimes she dreamed in symbols she didn't understand, but felt true. She also found herself pausing before speaking, listening not just to words, but to the silence between them. "I'm still me," she said, more to herself than to Kayla. "You are more than you were," Kayla replied gently, "and that is not a loss." Later that day they were summoned to the central chamber, not for ceremony but for discussion. A delegation from Earth had arrived, 3 humans in crisp uniforms led by a woman named Claire Reed Stern, and sharp-eyed with a voice that cut like Glassam's, Lena Carter. Claire said without offering a hand. You've caused quite a stir back home. Lena stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. She wore simple station attire. No finery, just clean lines and quiet dignity. I didn't mean to cause trouble, she said. I'm here to build peace. Claire scoffed or surrender. Kayla stepped forward, her presence calm but firm. The Varelians do not seek conquest. They seek connection, and you expect us to believe that. Claire's eyes narrowed. You've woven her into your hive mind, turned her into something not quite human anymore. Lena felt a flicker of anger but also sadness. She remembered Claire from the council briefings, always pushing for control, always distrusting anything she couldn't measure. I chose this, Lena said clearly. No one forced me. The bond is real, but it's mine. I'm not lost, I'm learning. Claire studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You have 24 hours to prove this union is voluntary and beneficial, or the council will recall you under emergency protocol. They left without another word. That night Lena couldn't sleep. She paced the balcony, watching the twin moons cast silver light over the station's outer hull. Kayla joined her. Not speaking, just standing beside her, shoulder to shoulder. Do you think they'll take me back? Lena asked. Only if you wish to go? Kayla said, if you stay, it must be your choice, not mine, not theirs. Lena looked at her. The violet glow of Kayla's eyes reflecting the stars. You've never asked me to stay because love cannot be commanded. Kayla replied, it can only be offered. Tears welled in Lena's eyes, not from fear, but from the weight of being truly seen. The next morning she recorded a message, not for the council but for the people. Of Earth, she stood in the resonance garden where the singing plants swayed gently around her. She wore her Earth clothes, the faded blue jacket she'd brought from Oregon, and spoke plainly. My name is Lena Carter. I was born in a small town where the biggest news was a broken fence or a late harvest. I never thought I'd leave Earth, let alone marry an alien. But here I am, and I'm not broken. I'm not controlled. I'm growing. She spoke of the bond not as a loss of self, but as an expansion. Of it she described how Kayla taught her to listen with her whole body, how the Varelians mourned with color and celebrated with light, how they valued harmony, not dominance. I'm still human, she said, but I'm also something more. And that's okay. She sent the message and waited. Hours passed. Then a reply came, not from the council but from thousands of ordinary people. Messages flooded the station's public feed from students, farmers, teachers, children, all saying the same thing. Thank you for showing us another way. Even Martha sent a short note through the old comm line. You made the right choice, my girl. Claire and her team departed quietly the next day without ceremony. With that tension lifted, Lena and Kayla turned their attention to building something lasting. They began hosting shared learning sessions where humans and Varelians taught each other their ways. A young engineer named Dana learned to weave light threads with Varelian artisans, while a Varelian named Torin learned to play guitar. His long fingers clumsy at first but determined, Lena found joy in these small exchanges. She saw how fear melted when people sat together, shared food, asked questions, listened. One afternoon while helping set up a new hydroponic bay, she felt a sudden wave of dizziness. She leaned against the wall, her vision blurring. Kayla was at her side instantly, her hand on Lena's forehead. You're burning up. But Varelians don't get sick, Lena whispered, confused. You're not fully Varelian, Kayla said gently, and your human body is reacting to the bond's deepening. It's rare but not unheard of. They took her to the healing chamber, a quiet space lined with bioluminescent moss that pulsed in time with the patient's heartbeat. For 3 days, Lena drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she saw memories that weren't hers. Kayla as a child running through crystal groves, a Varelian elder singing a lullaby in a language of light. On the 4th day, she woke clear-eyed and calm. You stayed, Kayla said, relief. Soft in her voice, you didn't leave either. Lena smiled. After that, the bond shifted again. It wasn't just emotional, now it was physical too. Lena's skin sometimes shimmered faintly in low light. Her eyes held a hint of violet when she was deep in thought, but she didn't fear it. She embraced it as part of her new truth. Months passed and the station became a true crossroads of species. Trade flourished, not just in goods but in ideas, art, music, stories. A human poet wrote verses inspired by Varelian light dances. A Varelian composer created symphonies using earth, wind, and rain. Lena and Kayla stood at the heart of it all, not as rulers but as guides. One evening as they walked the outer ring of the station hand in hand, Lena stopped and looked out at the endless dark. "Do you think we've done enough?" she asked. Kayla squeezed her hand. "Enough is not the goal, connection." Lena nodded. She understood now that peace wasn't a destination, but a daily choice. 1,000 small acts of trust back on Earth. Change came slowly but surely. Schools began teaching about the Varelians not as threats, but as neighbors. Farmers planted crops using Varelian soil techniques. Cities installed light harmonizers that reduced stress and noise. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in the quiet of their quarters, Lena and Kayla built a home not defined by species or origin, but by care, by patience, by love, that asked for nothing but gave everything. One night as they lay beneath a transparent dome watching a meteor shower streak across the sky, Lena whispered, "I never believed in fate, do you know?" Kayla asked. "I believe in us," she said, and that was enough. Far away on a quiet porch in Oregon, an old woman closed her eyes and smiled. The wind carried the scent of lavender and something new, something starlit and strange but beautiful. The end. The peace that had settled over Zen Harmony Station did not last forever. It never does in stories that matter. One morning the alarm bells rang. Not the soft chime of routine alerts, but the deep resonant toll of emergency. The kind that made even the walls shiver. Lena was in the hydroponic bay checking the new strain of earth wheat. When the lights shifted from white to crimson, she felt Kayla's presence before she saw her, a ripple of urgency through their bond. "Something is wrong, Kayla," said her voice tight. The central chamber was already crowded when they arrived. Humans and Varelians stood shoulder to shoulder, not as separate groups, but as one uneasy mass. Claire Reed was there again, but this time her face was pale. Not angry. "A ship has entered Proxima space," she said. "It's not ours, it's not Varelian." Lena's stomach dropped. She knew what that meant. Others did too. The galaxy was vast but not empty, and not all who wandered were peaceful. The unknown vessel hung in orbit, silent and dark, shaped like a jagged claw. It gave no signals, no hails, no warnings. It just watched. For 3 days nothing happened. Then, on the 4th morning, it moved, not toward the station but toward the Varelian homeworld. Kayla went still as stone, her skin darkened to near black, a sign of deep distress. "They are going to the crystal forests," she whispered. "That is where the weave is strongest." "Why would they go there?" Lena asked. "To break it." Kayla said, "If the heart of the weave is damaged, the entire species could unravel." "I didn't hesitate. We have to stop them." How Claire snapped. "Humans have no weapons here, and the Varelians don't believe in war." "Not war," Lena said, "but defenses." She turned to Kayla. "Do you trust me?" "With my life," Kayla replied. "Then let me try something." Lena ran to the engineering bay, where Dana and Torin were already working on a plan using old Earth tech and Varelian resonance fields. They had built a small shuttle modified with harmonic disruptors designed not to destroy but to confuse, to scatter signals and create illusions. "It's untested," Dana warned. "So was love between a human and a Varelian," Lena said with a small smile. Within hours, she and Kayla were aboard the shuttle named the Wayfarer after an old Earth song Martha used to hum. They launched into the void, the unknown ship growing larger with every passing minute. As they approached, Lena felt a strange pressure in her mind. Not from Kayla, but from something else. Cold, sharp, invasive. "They're scanning us," Kayla said. "Their tech is unlike anything we've seen." Lena activated the disruptors. The shuttle shimmered and split into 3 ghost images on the enemy's sensors, a trick borrowed from Squid and Starlight. For a moment it worked. The claw ship hesitated. Then it fired not with lasers or missiles but with silence, a wave of null energy that swallowed sound light. Even thought Lena screamed as the bond between her and Kayla flickered like a dying candle. She saw flashes of Kayla's memories, burning forests, shattered crystals, weeping elders. "No," she gasped and slammed her hand on the console, rerouting all power to the resonance core. The Wayfarer pulsed with blue light. A pure tone erupted from its hull, not loud but deep enough to vibrate through metal and bone. The claw ship shuddered. It was working, but the strain was too much. The shuttle groaned, metal screaming, the console sparked, and smoke filled the cabin hold. Kayla shouted, gripping the controls with 4 hands while Lena fought to keep the core stable. "I can't hold it much longer," Lena cried. "Then don't hold it," Kayla said. "Look at Melina." Turned her eyes, met Kyla's violet gaze, and in that moment she understood. They didn't need to fight the silence, they needed to fill it. Lena closed her eyes and reached not just into the bond, but beyond, into the weave itself. She poured her memories into it. The smell of rain on dry soil, the sound of her grandmother's voice, the warmth of Kayla's hand, the laughter of friends, the quiet joy of fixing something broken and making it whole again. She gave the weave her humanity, and the weave answered. Light exploded from the Wayfarer. Not destructive, but radiant. A wave of pure connection that washed over the claw ship, not as an attack, but as an offering. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the ship's jagged form softened, its edges blurred, and from its hull emerged figures, tall and thin, with skin like cracked stone, their eyes hollow but now filling with something like wonder. They were the Zenthari, a species long thought extinct, survivors of a war that had left them without home, without voice, without hope. They had come not to destroy, but to see if anyone still remembered how to feel. Kayla reached out through the weave, not with fear, but with sorrow for their paint. The Zenthari ship lowered its weapons. Lena guided the Wayfarer closer until the 2 vessels touched hull to hull. No words were spoken, but understanding passed between them. Like breath back on Zen Harmony Station, the celebration was quiet. Not with cheers, but with shared silence, a moment of awe for what had been avoided and what had been found. In the days that followed, the Zenthari stayed not as guests, but as kin. They shared their history of loss and slowly began to heal. The Varelians taught them how to sing again, using stones and wind and light. Lena helped them build shelters that felt like home, using both earthwood and Varelian crystal. Claire watched it, all from the observation deck, her arms crossed but her eyes softer than before. "You were right," she said to Lena one evening. "You didn't need weapons, you needed a bridge." Lena smiled. "I didn't build it alone." Months passed and the station grew larger, not in size but in heart. New quarters were built for the Zenthari, gardens expanded to include their memory vines that bloomed only when touched by kindness. And in the central chamber, a new unity stone was placed, not for marriage but for remembrance. Elena and Kyla stood before it one night, their hands linked. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we said no?" Kyla asked. Lena thought of the claw ship, the silence, the fear. She shook her head. No, because saying yes was the only way to find out who we could become. Their bond hummed between them, stronger now, not just 2 souls but 3 species woven into something new. On Earth, news of the Zenthari spread not as a threat, but as a lesson. Schools taught children how to listen with more than their ears. Cities held quiet hours where noise was lowered so people could hear each other again. Martha wrote a new letter, this time with shaky handwriting but clear words. "You didn't just marry an alien, you married the future." One afternoon, Lena stood in the expanded hydroponic bay, now filled with earthwheat, Zenthari moss, and Varelian light blossoms. She ran her fingers over a leaf that glowed faintly in response. Kyla joined her, holding 2 cups of root tea dinner. Later, she asked Lena, nodded, then paused. "You know, I never thought I'd be happy out here." "You were always happy," Kayla said, "you just didn't know it yet." They sat on the balcony as the twin moons rose and the stars blinked awake above them. The Zenthari ship rested nearby, its hull now etched with symbols of peace. Lena leaned her head on Kayla's shoulder and closed her eyes, the bond between them warm and steady, like a heartbeat that never stopped. Far away on a quiet porch in Oregon, an old woman tucked a sprig of lavender into a letter and whispered to the wind, "Tell her I'm proud." And somewhere in the endless dark between worlds, 3 species breathed as one. Not because they were the same, but because they chose to care. The end. Peace had taken root on Zen Harmony Station, deeper and wider than anyone expected. The Zenthari no longer huddled in corners, but walked the halls with quiet confidence, their cracked skin now softened by time and care. They tended gardens that bloomed, with memory flowers that opened only when someone spoke a true feeling aloud. Lena often sat among them, listening to their slow stories of a world lost to fire and silence. But peace is never still. It grows or it fades. One morning, the station's Outer sensors picked up a faint signal not from Proxima space but from the edge of known human territory. A distress call broken and repeating in old Earth. Code Elena recognized it instantly. It was the emergency frequency used by deep-range scouts, the kind her parents had flown before their ship went dark over Titan decades ago. Her hands shook as she played the message again. Static hissed, then a voice weak but clear. "This is Scout Vessel Orion requesting aid. We are under unknown influence. Repeat, not hostile but not human." Kayla stood behind her, her presence a steady warmth in the room. "You do not have to go," Lena swallowed hard. Out of the council debated for hours. Some argued it was a trap. Others said it was a ghost signal, a trick of solar winds, but Lena knew better. The voice, the phrasing, the pause before repeat, it was real. Claire Reed, now serving as Earth's liaison to the station. "Spoke last, if you go with full support. But know this, if it's a threat, we will not hesitate to act." Lena nodded. She understood. The Wayfarer was refitted for long-range travel. Torin and Dana worked through the night installing new shields and a modified resonance core that could broadcast calm across species lines. Kayla insisted. "Oncoming? You can't stay behind," Lena said softly. "And you cannot face your past alone." Kayla replied. They launched at dawn, the station shrinking behind them until it was just another star in the black. The journey took 12 days, during which Lena barely slept. She stared at star maps tracing the route her parents might have taken, wondering if this was fate or just cruel coincidence. On the 13th day, they found the Orion. It drifted near a dead moon, its hull scarred but intact. No weapons, fire, no explosion, just stillness as they docked. Lena's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break inside. The ship was cold and dark but not empty. Figures moved in the shadows. Not human, not Varelian, not Xanthari. They were small, slender, with skin like woven bark and eyes like polished amber. They made no sound, but their presence filled the air with a low hum. Kayla tensed but did not reach for a weapon. Lena stepped forward slowly. "We mean no harm," she said. One of the beings turned its head, and in that moment Lena felt it, not through the bond but through something older. A pull in her blood, a whisper in her bones. These were the ones who had taken her parents not as captives but as guests. The leader stepped forward and placed a hand. On the wall, a panel lit up, showing images not in words but in feeling: a ship lost in a storm of cosmic dust, a human couple offering help, a crash, a rescue, a life shared in hidden valleys beneath the moon's surface. "Your parents lived here," the being seemed to say. They chose to stay. Lena's breath caught, tears spilled down her cheeks, not from grief but from wonder. They showed her a chamber filled with logs, recordings, drawings, her mother's handwriting on the walls, her father's laugh echoing from an old speaker. "They are gone now," the being said gently, "but their love remains." Lena sank to her knees. Kayla knelt beside her, not speaking, just being there. For 3 days they stayed on the Orion. Lena reading every note, touching every object. The beings watched in silence, offering food that tasted like rain and honey. On the 4th morning, Lena stood at the airlock, ready to leave. "You could stay," the leader said. She looked at Kayla, then back at the ship. "No, my home is out there now." They returned to Zen harmony with a new understanding. The universe was not just filled with threats and treaties, but with quiet choices made in the dark by people who simply wanted to connect back on the station. Lena shared her story not as a secret, but as a lesson. She spoke of her parents not as victims, but as pioneers who saw kindness where others saw strangeness. The beings from the moon joined the station too. They called themselves the Sylvan, and they brought with them seeds that grew into trees that sang when the wind passed through their leaves. Life changed again. Children from all species played beneath those trees, learning each other's songs. The Xanthari taught them how to listen to silence, the Varelians how to weave light, the humans how to build things that lasted. Lena and Kayla walked through the new grove one evening. Their hands linked. "Do you feel it?" Lena asked. Kayla smiled. "The station is becoming a world," "Yes," Lena said. "And we helped plant the first seed." Months passed, and Earth began sending more than messages. They sent families, teachers, artists, people who wanted to live. Not just Visita School was built with classrooms that floated in zero gravity and gardens that grew upside down. A market opened where humans traded bread for Varelian light threads and Xanthari memory stones. Lena often stood at the edge of it all, watching. watching how a human child would help a Zenthari elder carry water. How a Sylvan would hum a lullaby to a Varelian infant, she no longer felt like a bridge. She felt like soil one day. Martha's letter came not through the comm unit but in a small box carried by a young courier from Earth. Inside was a dried sprig of lavender and a note written in shaky hand, "You made a home." Where none existed, that's the truest kind of courage. Lena pinned the lavender to her wall beside a sylvan leaf and a Zenthari tear crystal. That night, as she and Kayla sat beneath the singing trees, a new signal came through. Not a distress call, not a warning, but a question from a distant system. "Have you room for one more?" Lena looked at Kayla, who looked at the stars. "We always have room," she said. And so the station grew again, not in metal or light, but in heart far away on a quiet porch in Oregon. An old woman closed her eyes and smiled. The wind carried the scent of lavender and something new, something starlit and strange but beautiful. The end. The signal from the distant system grew stronger over the next few weeks, not urgent, not demanding, just steady like a heartbeat. Asking to be heard, Lena and Kayla spent hours in the communication hub, listening to its rhythm. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, not Varelian harmonic, not Zenthari silence, not Sylvan song. It pulsed in patterns that felt ancient and patient. Earth's council grew nervous again. Old fears stirring in quiet rooms, they sent Claire with a warning. "Do not respond until we understand their intent." But Lena had learned something different over the years. Intent is not always spoken. It is shown, so she answered, not with words, but with a simple broadcast, a recording of the singing trees, the laughter of children in the floating school, the hum of the resonance gardens, and the soft chime of Varelian light weaving through the corridors. She sent peace not as a declaration, but as a gift. Days passed. Then a reply came, not as sound, but as light, a single beam that painted the station's outer hull with shifting colors, that told a story of a species who lived inside dying stars. They were the Solari beings of plasma and memory, who had watched galaxies form and fade. They had no bodies as others knew them, but they longed for connection before their sun went dark forever. Lena felt their sorrow through the signal. Not as noise, but as warmth fading. "We must go to them," she said. Kayla did not argue. She knew this was not just duty. It was calling. The Wayfarer was prepared again, this time with a new core built by all four species. Varelian resonance, Zenthari memory circuits, Sylvan biofilaments, and human engineering. It could carry not just people, but presence. They launched with a small crew: Dana Torin, a young Zenthari named Eli, and a Sylvan elder named Nara, who carried seeds that could bloom in starlight. The journey took weeks through quiet space where even the stars seemed to hold their breath. When they reached the Solari system, the sun was dimming, its edges fraying like old cloth. The Solari did not speak. They showed images flooded the Wayfarer, not on screens but in the air itself. Scenes of their birth in solar flares, their dances in coronal loops, their libraries, written in magnetic fields. They had watched Zen harmony grow. They had seen Lena say yes when others said no. They had felt the bond between human and alien, and they wanted to know what it meant to be remembered. Lena stepped into the observation pod and placed her hand on the glass. "You are not forgotten," she whispered, and in that moment the Solari reached out. Not with hands, but with light, wrapping the Wayfarer in a gentle glow. Nara released the seeds. They floated into the dying sun and bloomed, instantly, not with petals but with echoes of every voice that had ever spoken kindness on the station. The Solari wept in gold. For 3 days they stayed, sharing stories not in language but in feeling. Lena gave them memories of her grandmothers. Porch Kayla shared the first time she felt hope. Eli showed them the moment silence became song. Nara offered the first note of a Sylvan lullaby. The Solari gave back too. They showed the birth of Proxima Centauri, the first human foot on Mars, the quiet courage of a technician who said yes to the unknown. When it was time to leave, the Solari gifted them a fragment of their core, not fire but preserved light that would never fade, back on Zen harmony. The station welcomed them with open arms. The Solari light was placed in the central chamber where it pulsed softly alongside the Unity Stone and the Zenthari memory vine. Life changed again. The light taught the young ones how to dream in color. It helped the elders remember names they had lost. It warmed the coldest corners of the station with a gentle glow that felt like being held. Lena often sat before it, watching the patterns shift. You gave them peace, Kayla said one evening, joining her. No, Lena replied, they gave us the chance to give. And months passed and the station became more than a crossroads. It became a cradle, a place where species came not to trade or negotiate, but to heal, to learn to simply be together. Arth sent fewer warnings now, and more families. A new generation grew, up speaking 3 languages, humming Varelian tones, planting sylvan seeds, and listening to Zenthari silence as if it were music. Lena and Kayla walked through the central plaza one afternoon, watching a human child teach a Solari light fragment how to play hide and seek. It flickered behind a pillar, then reappeared with a soft chime. Do you ever miss Earth? Lena asked. Kayla looked at the sky. Not the one from her homeworld, but this one filled with ships from many stars. I miss nothing when I'm with you. Lena smiled and squeezed her hand. That night a new message came, not from deep space but from Oregon. Martha was Elena's heart stopped. She did not hesitate. She prepared the Wayfarer again, but this time she did not go alone. Kyla stood. Beside her, Dana packed medical supplies. Torin modified the ship for atmospheric entry. Eli brought memory stones to ease pain. Nara carried a sylvan bloom that could soothe fever. They flew through the dark, faster than ever before. When they landed, in the small town, the air smelled of pine and rain, just as Lena remembered. Martha waited on the porch, wrapped in a quilt, her eyes bright but her body frailly. You brought them all, she whispered. Lena knelt beside her. Yes. Martha reached out and touched Kayla's hand, then Eli's stone, then Nara's leaf. She smiled. You didn't just find love, you built a world. For a week they stayed in the cabin. The Solari light resting on the windowsill, casting golden patterns on the walls. Martha listened to stories of singing trees and memory vines of light beings in crystal forests. She held Lena's hand every night and whispered, You were always enough. On the 8th morning, she closed her eyes and did not wake. They buried her beneath the lavender bush, her favorite spot. Lena stood by the grave, tears falling not in silence but in song. The Varelians hummed. The Zenthari wept in color. The sylvan leaves rustled. The Solari light glowed soft and warm. Back on Zen Harmony they planted a new garden, in Martha's name. Not with earth soil, but with a mix from all worlds: Varelian crystal, Zenthari moss, sylvan roots, Solari light, and a single sprig of Oregon lavender. Children came to tend it every day. Lena no longer felt torn between stars and soil. She knew now they were the same thing, just seen from different angles. One evening, as she and Kayla walked through the garden, a new signal came through, faint but clear, from the edge of the galaxy. Lena looked at Kayla, who looked at the stars. Ready? She asked. Always, Kayla replied, and so they prepared the Wayfarer again. Not as heroes, but as friends, carrying seeds of peace into the unknown. Far away on a quiet hill in Oregon, lavender bloomed under twin moons that did not exist on Earth but shone, bright in memory. The end.